Hey everybody, welcome back to Indie Game Dev Report. This is episode 19 and the start of season 3. Now the reason it's a new season is because there's been about a 2-year hiatus between the last episode and this episode. Right? Actually more. I think back in 2021 the last episode was released. So yeah, well it was December of 2021. So it's been a good while. Either way, I've got a great interview lined up with Anthony from Radiobush talking about his game Light Haze World. And that's a really great interview. Can't wait to share that. First, I want to speak a little bit about the hiatus and what's been going on with me. Well, things were going great with Retro Spaceball. I was working really hard. I was getting back into the podcast again. And just then, suddenly, I had to move across the country and just pack up my studio and get the heck out of Dodge. Because one of my neighbors, I suspect, started a drug lab just right next to me or underneath me, or it was close enough where it was essentially fuming me out of my own condo. So I had to just pack up and get the heck out of there. Around that same time, my mother was diagnosed with brain cancer, so I've been, helping her out. So I moved back in with my mother to help her, and she's been appreciative of that, and it's kind of helping me out, so we're helping each other out. We weren't sure how long I was going to stay, and I'm still here, so I'm still not sure how long I'm going to stay. I do want to eventually move back into my own place, but right now I'm able to do this, so I might as well stick around for a little bit and be as helpful as I can, and hope for the best. Now I'm working from home, using the internet, working remotely, so no problems there, and that's been really great for me. So I'm able to continue working on my job, continue helping my family, and continue working on my own games. The podcast kind of fell off because I was getting used to living here, and things are very loud here. My folks can be very loud, and there's a dog here, and there was a very loud cat. Unfortunately, she passed, but it is a little bit quieter now, and I'm a little bit more comfortable having done meetings for work and stuff like that, so I'm ready to jump back into interviewing all these great devs and different industry professionals. I've got some great interviews lined up. I'm really excited for this season. Hopefully I can keep it going, and I won't have to take another break or anything like that, but who knows? Anyone who's been listening long enough knows that this podcast is just kind of, I'm not making any money off of it. It's a bit of a hobby. It's kind of another passion project of mine where I work on Retro Spaceball, and also Source Hack is a game that I've been working on for Game Boy that I wasn't working on in the last episode, so that's new. Yeah, so I've got my own things going on, and then I'm working in games, so that's nice. Oh, and then health stuff came up. So, and I mentioned it in the interview, but previously, and even in the older episodes, you can hear that towards the end, my health had become a concern. I was unable to figure out what was going on at the time. Well, I finally figured out that it's a gluten issue. So just a change in my diet was all that it took, but it was really hard for me to figure out what was going on. A lot of the doctors, they didn't know. They were all scratching their heads. I was getting all types of tests and stuff and scans, and they're all coming back clean. So, I mean, that's good that it's coming back clean, but it didn't help me diagnose the issue. But things are looking up. Things are getting better here. My intestine is repairing itself finally. So that's good. Yeah, I'm a little bit old to be realizing that I shouldn't be eating gluten, so the effects are not good. But I'm doing better, so that is good. And there's no cancer or anything like that. Any related issues that can sometimes come from celiac disease and gluten intolerance. Everything else seems pretty clear, other than a few cysts in one of my kidneys, but they said that's nothing to worry about, so things are looking good. And yeah, I'll keep this as short as possible here. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on this interview, and you'll hear from me at the end. So today I've got Anthony from Radiobush, and he's here to talk about Light Haze World. Anthony, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit more here?
Hi, I am Anthony. I'm from Australia, so that's why I sound really funny. And yeah, we're talking about Light Haze World. It's a game that I've been working on for a long time now, probably 3 years kind of thing, kind of coming up. So Light Haze World is a cozy puzzle game, and it's basically the idea came about that I play a lot of puzzle games and I love puzzle games, but puzzle games seem to be like, hey, here's a puzzle game, here's a puzzle. Now let's just jam another puzzle down your throat and another puzzle, and all of a sudden you're just like, ugh, why do adventure games like get some action and then they get some story, but puzzle games don't seem to get that. They seem to be like all puzzle, puzzle, puzzle all the time. And so this game kind of came about the idea of, hey, let's make a game where you can explore a world and you can find like puzzles to do, and even things in the world could become puzzles. But it's kind of like just not just here's a puzzle, there's a puzzle, just keep doing puzzles. There's story and all that kind of stuff going on as well.
Yeah, and I played the demo, and the story it doesn't tell you much in the demo, of course, but you can tell that it's going in a good direction.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I really like the way that the text is like floating above the landscape and then falls as you walk by. I thought that was a really nice touch.
Well, the idea of the character and the story, which will come out in the actual game, is that the character has his name's Nim, and he suffers heavily from anxiety. Well, everyone does depression in video games, but anxiety seems to be this thing that we all kind of have, but no one seems to make a game about that specifically. I don't even think I said that right, but you know what I'm saying? Like they don't seem to make games about that. So I wanted to kind of show how being like super anxious can really debilitate people. And so a lot of the thoughts of the character will be shown up in the game. So another part of the game was to have story, but not force feed you the story. The idea is that if you want the story, you can go and find the story in the game. And if you don't want the story, then it's fine. You don't need that to kind of play through the game. It's kind of like, like it's like extra lore, or do you need that kind of thing.
The gameplay is not interrupted.
Mm.
Or if it is, it's very small stuff about showing you what direction to go, at least from the demo.
Yeah.
I haven't played the full game. But yeah.
Oh, well, no one's played the full game. It's not even quite finished. So.
Right.
Not even me. But yeah. I'm just gearing up at the moment to go to a game convention. There's something that's like we're post-COVID now, so these things are starting to come back into our lives. COVID feels like such a long time ago. But all of a sudden, you like learning what to do at game conventions and things like that is super kind of interesting part for indie developers. Anyway, I think it's really good learning. I
haven't actually been to one, so I'd have a lot to learn.
I thought you would have went to like 100 of them, like with Retro Ball, like, because I think you've been building that almost longer than I have.
I have been spending a long time on Retro Spaceball. I started it in 2017, but at the time I was focused on going to like arcade conventions just for fun. I volunteered at an arcade convention a couple times, and I met a bunch of friends that way. I learned a lot about pinball machines and what the techs do and all of that stuff. But yeah, no, I never actually pulled the trigger on any real events. I was looking at prices and stuff. It was like $6,000 for a booth. How am I going to afford that? And I just, all of a sudden COVID happened. So
yeah, and then everyone started doing digital events, and I for a moment in time thought maybe we're never going to get the live event again. Maybe that's never going to be a thing. But they've come back bigger and better and like more refined than ever. Like they know what people want at these events, and so they they're way more thought out, I think, than they were before COVID. And the organizers know what to spend their money on when creating these events as well. They're not just like hey, let's just hope this works out. They thought about this a lot. And so I'm going to an event in Sydney in April. Now,
What's
I
it called?
started, it's the Generation Games Expo.
Oh, I've never heard of it, but that doesn't surprise me.
Well, this is the first year it's running, but I started organizing that event like a year ago, and I'm going to an event that's next week in Melbourne. It's the Games Expo, very original name. But yeah, I started organizing that like 6 months ago as well. Like, and then like when PAX comes back to Australia, that's you spend pretty much 6 months, 9 months organizing for these events. So they're not like something that you just turn up to and go, hey, here's my game, check it out. It's like you've spent time thinking about how it should be and how your game should be presented, what you should do for these events. We actually made
right?
we made the demo for the first PAX for PAX last year. We went in October last year, and we made the demo for Light Haze World just for that event, and then people liked it, so we kept it around. But that's where the first. But I don't know if we would have made a demo if we didn't go to PAX. So
interesting.
You going to these events, you go, oh, should I make a demo? Yeah, we're going to now because we're going to PAX, and all of a sudden it changes the way you develop things a bit.
Oh, for sure.
And the feedback is like the most amazing feedback you can get, because people can't hide behind their monitors or anything and be nice to you. They're in your face. They're like, yeah, this is good, or this. Yeah.
That's one thing that COVID's made difficult, is getting like live reactions. You know, telling someone to point a camera at their face while they play your game is some people do that. Other people, it's like, why? You know what I mean? But I could see how going to a event would really help. You know, because you can tell when someone's lying that easier, when they're explaining something, but you can tell they're thinking about something else, or you know, if they're trying to explain something that normally you wouldn't understand, you can tell what they're talking about just because you're right there with them.
Oh, 100%. And also, like, an interesting thing was, so you played through the demo. It takes like 20 minutes, half an hour to kind of get through. Now, we thought everyone would play it for like 5 minutes.
And yeah.
Everyone was like playing it for the entirety of the game. And
that's a good sign.
That's a good sign, but we're like, oh, if people played it shorter, then we would get more people through playing it, which could have made like maybe a different, maybe more wish lists out of it, maybe more different things would have came if we had more people playing for a shorter amount of time. But I don't think we could have made the game like a 5-minute game, because it probably would have been. At the moment, the demo is a prequel to the actual game, so it's its own little separate kind of version of the game.
I think that's a good way to do it, especially for a puzzle game.
100%. But it also gives you, when people are playing a puzzle game, we didn't want to include puzzles that are going to be in the actual game, and B, like sometimes you don't see other puzzles for a level or two. So we wanted to show that there's going to be a lot of variety in puzzles. In the demo, we could do that, like show you how different things are going to come about in the game. Yeah, it's pretty fun. But anyway, this time I'm planning for this event. I'm thinking I'm going to put one demo chair there with a demo game playing, and maybe put like a reel of, I don't know, say a 10-minute video of how the game's come about and stuff like that, so people can just stand around and watch that. As a
sounds like a solid plan.
Yeah, well, last time we had 2 chairs, and we found that we were like helping people or talking to people on each chair. And then we let a lot of people walk past our booth without kind of coming up and seeing what we were making or whatever, because we were trying to be hospitable to the people that were there.
Sure.
So yeah, anyway, that's my life of excitement. And also one bit of advice too, if you end up going to any of these conventions, you get completely addicted to them and you'll never want to not go to a convention again. It
hopefully
makes you
they're
feel
cheaper there than they are here, because I know that a booth can be pretty expensive here, like I mentioned earlier.
Yeah. Do you get like government like subsidies and stuff like that too for booths?
Not really, not for games. Unfortunately, that's one industry where our government is very lacking in as far as grants and stuff go. You might be able to get something for being a entrepreneur or something like that if you have like a grant writer or something like that, but I don't know, and I don't think it's enough to actually go out and do that for my project anyways. But
yeah,
the US has its own issues for sure.
Well, I think like the booths vary, but they're normally around the $2,000 mark, which is US money is about what, $1,500, something like that.
I'm not sure about the conversion. You're probably more aware of it than I am.
Yeah, so about that kind of money is about the going rate for a booth anywhere.
I know the last time I looked, I was looking at the different prices, and it was like a different price if you had Wi-Fi access. It was a different price if you had an outlet. It was they charged you for how much voltage you were going to use. Like, it depended on a lot of different stuff. Of course, that depends on the venue and all the different events and stuff too.
And also, so they'll give you out like a flyer of what's at the event. I would recommend anyone that's actually interested in going to these conventions, if ringing up someone at the convention and asking them, can they put together like an indie booth or something like that? Because that's what actually happened for the Sydney one that I'm going to. They had like all these different plans and it was really confusing. I'm like, I just want an indie booth. Put me together an indie booth that's like affordable. And I told them like what the other going rates were for other conventions I'd been to. And I said, well, that's what I'm paying over there. So affordable's around that price. And they're like, okay. And they got back to me with, here's a booth that might suit you. And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. I'm in, I
think that's a great idea.
So yeah, I'd ring them up, see, because they want people they want developers at these booths. And you also might, the other thing is you could potentially go with a group of people, like I've seen at these conventions, like a whole group of people that share booths and stuff like that too. So you might only get part-time use of the booth. But that might be enough to get you a little bit in the door if you've only got like a limited budget.
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of thing that I was looking into prior to COVID.
Yeah.
So you've got your demo on Steam now, and you've had your Steam page up for a while.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're collecting wish lists and all of that.
Yeah.
Do you have like a release date planned out, or is that something that's still tentative, or you're just going with the flow here?
It's a little bit going with the flow.
Okay.
We were hoping for like later this year, but then as you go to things like these conventions and things like that, you start making different decisions, and it starts using up your time as well going to these events. So if we finish in like October, and then is it worthwhile spending like a little bit more time just fine tuning the game and spending some time on promotion leading into a release date, say early next year? I don't know. It depends on when it gets finished this year. It is probably the real answer.
Sure.
Because I think you've got to have a little bit of lead time into that release instead of just hitting, hey, here's the game, go and get it, and no one sees it, and then all of a sudden it just gets buried in the Steam library of dead games. Like, I don't know how do you get that exposure? And it's really hard being an indie developer and developing and doing Screenshot Saturday and all these kind of little things that lead to kind of people noticing your game.
Sure. Now, did you do a Next Fest with this demo?
I have not yet, because you can only do one Next Fest per game.
Well, that should help.
Well, they recommend doing that just on release.
Right. The last Next Fest before release. Yeah. I think that's a great idea. It's a good idea to get your demo up early and then wait on the Next Fest, is what we're saying.
Mm-hmm. I think that's 100% right. One thing that I've been doing a bit is changing like the cards or your little graphics on the Steam store, like updating them.
That's a great point.
And as you get through doing that, like updating your screenshot, as the game gets better and you update stuff, and then all of a sudden it gets a little bit of a boost from Steam each time you do that. So I just did it recently to the game and put some new art and stuff into it, and then all of a sudden it gets another 500 downloads of the demo. You know, like it's the way that you kind of get some free promotion without kind of getting caught up with just letting it fall down the Steam ladder, I guess.
Yeah. Things definitely fall between the cracks on Steam all the time. So it makes sense to update things. Yeah. So I was going to ask, I know that you're like the main developer behind all of Radiobush.
Yeah.
But are there other people on your team, or is it just you?
Yeah, well, it definitely... I'm a full-time in making Light Haze World, and then I've got some part-time people around me that one guy's helping out with music, and then another guy's doing a lot of the artwork for the game.
Okay, cool.
So with the game artwork, I will tend to make bits and pieces, and then he'll come through and just clean it up and make it a bit different in how it looks and make it better. And yeah, that's how we end up with what we have. I do all the coding. Yeah, there is other people there, but I don't know. I could have potentially done everything by myself, but that would have taken a lot longer.
Sure.
Or maybe it would have taken not a lot longer. Maybe it would have been less. I have theories on that, but I don't think it would have been as good a product.
Well, I got to say that the music and the visuals are awesome.
Oh, cool.
So I think you made the right choice. I'm not saying anything about your visuals or your music because I haven't seen it, but I know that the people that you have working with you did an excellent job, at least on the demo.
Yeah, I'm 100% happy. And the music and the visuals are actually better in the full game, and we haven't even been working on animations and stuff that much at this point. Like we're planning to revisit that and improve his running ability and little things like that have to kind of come into the making it a fully polished game.
Sure.
But it's funny, like when you've got people working for you, they'll ask questions and you kind of have these, they're not arguments, but they're like discussion points on how you envision the level. And they go, oh, what about if you do this? If you were building it as a solo developer, for example, you would have just gone ahead and done your first idea and not taken on anybody else's idea because, I mean, who have you got to ask? And then once you go ahead and you have other people putting their, hey, what about this? What about this? All of a sudden, you start trying 3 different things, which takes longer for the game to get built, but you actually end up with a way better product.
For sure.
So that's why I'm saying I don't know if actually having more people in the game speeds up production, but it definitely improves what you're making.
Yeah. From what I've seen with my project, getting the feedback has been like the only thing that's been keeping the project going. And also what made this project take much longer than what I first expected. Because the first prototype I made, it was just everything was was wrong basically in the player's eyes. Like the game was still there in my eyes because as a developer you can kind of imagine how it's supposed to be kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
The players, they don't see it that way. They're going to tell you the ship's too slow, the bullets are too slow, everything needs to be faster, the physics are off. And then, you try some things and some things work, and then some things you shouldn't have tried at all because it was a red herring or it was a misstep.
Well, I think with feedback, you've got to have that thing where you, I don't know, I don't implement something unless 3 people have told me kind of thing. Like if one person tells me, hey, them puzzles are dumb, then I'm like, okay, but 20 people have told me they like them puzzles. They're just maybe not for you. Like,
it's perfect,
and then you ask them a follow-up question. Hey, what kind of game do you actually play? Oh, yeah, I like playing Fortnite. So I say, okay, well, is a puzzle game really in your wheelhouse of games you like to play? And they're like, oh, not really. This is the first puzzle game I played. I'm like, oh, okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
you really got to figure out what the feedback means by where it's coming from, and different feedback mean different things. Some of it's useful, some of it's not. And as a developer, you develop a sense for which feedback is you should listen to. And like you said, if 3 people tell you, that's a pretty good sign. But if one person says it, like you might as well wait for the other 3 because it's going to take a long time to implement and to test with. And yeah, I mean, keep a note of it, sure. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like one person told me that I needed to make the player object more like Mario, and it just completely sidetracked everything because I tried that, and then I got a few players who liked the game enough to say like, oh yeah, this is fun. They didn't mention that they didn't like the player because of the new movement or whatever, so I uploaded the build to Newgrounds at the time, and all the feedback I got was the player sucks, the movement sucks, the controls suck. It's like, oh well, that sucks. So I that was their first impression, and I kind of blew it by listening to the wrong feedback. But that was years and years ago. I've learned a lot since then.
100%. Also, when we were at the convention, like PAX last year, and I said this is the real value is seeing people play the game.
Sure.
For example, in the demo, when we first released the demo, we noticed that the puzzles that were there in front of you, if you start the demo, you come through and pretty much straight away you run into a puzzle, and people didn't realize it was a puzzle because they're kind of these plant boxes, and I don't know, it kind of looks like decoration, and that's kind of how it was designed to be. But they didn't realize that there was a puzzle, firstly, and secondly, they didn't realize that there was a reward for completing the puzzle. So they would just run past that, keep running along, and then they go into the cave, and then they go, oh, okay, we've worked out this puzzle, and then they kind of come back, and they couldn't work out how to open a gate. So by just watching the people continually do that, we realized that we had to kind of implement some design feature that showed that this puzzle has a reward. And we did that by adding some flagpoles with like little coins and denominations on them. So people would go, oh, okay, so if we solve whatever this is, we'll get 5 coins. And that seems to have helped people understand, like just understand something. And it was all came about by, no one said, hey, we didn't understand, that's not a puzzle, but we saw how people were playing the game that made us implement that.
No, I think that's a really great idea. I did notice the flag, and it didn't seem out of place at all, and I knew exactly that it was a puzzle. I mean, I think I probably would have noticed that it was a puzzle before the flag was there, but it doesn't hurt that the flag is there. And then you can definitely know if you're passing something up, or if you're, you can kind of keep track of how many puzzles you've done that way. It's just easier for your brain to focus and know what is the game, because there's a lot of like environmental stuff that helps with the mood and the vibe of the game, and it's definitely better for being there. And you don't want the puzzles to look too different from that, so that way it fits in that reality, but they do need to look like puzzles. So I think you did a great job with that.
Yeah. Oh, it kind of reminds us of Mario. Mario does all these really subtle things in the game that everyone knows how Mario jumps and makes noises and all that kind of stuff. But like all these little subtle things, like just putting arrows around the map to kind of lead you, continually leading you where to go in that game. And then there's little flags, checkpoint flags. And the pole at the end, who would have thought that jumping, everyone tries to get to the top of the pole. And I don't know why they try to do it. Like, did Mario, no one in Mario came out and said, hey, you have to get to the top of the pole to get extra bonus. But just by the way they designed that pole, everyone's like, oh, if I get to the top of the pole, I want to be at the top. Like, it's just like a human instinct almost that makes people react like that in that particular game. And I love that design in games.
Yeah, of course, Mario, even the original Super Mario Brothers, there's just so much gold as far as game design is concerned in that game. They really hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how you got into game dev.
I do a lot of videos on YouTube and stuff, and I just made one about like how I would do game development differently. So I was thinking this is kind of a good starting point, because I think when you get into game development, you almost forget the first couple of years. I don't know if it's on purpose because they were so painful, or why it is that you kind of all of a sudden you just seem to know stuff, and a couple of years like before you had no idea why you were doing stuff. And yeah, it just kind of is a really quick transition, or maybe it's because that time period went really fast. But I started getting into game development mostly because of, I don't know, I was getting a little bit older and I thought, I don't want to be one of these old guys that kind of just seems to play video games when I'm 70. I mean, it's kind of cool, but I thought, oh, maybe I can stay in the game, doing games and play and make video games. Maybe that's a better entry point for me.
And how old were you around that time that you decided that?
I think in my late 20s, like my
okay.
late 20s. Yeah, like I think around that period. Yeah, and I was like, oh, I don't know. I just felt like I was, and I also thought that games are all starting to be the same, and I don't know. I just wasn't finding anything gaming new as well. Like I wanted something a little bit different and unique, and I think game development can be a natural progression for some gamers. And like for me, it definitely was.
I agree.
So, and then I got into it and started doing mobile games because everyone loves mobile games. That was a joke, by the way.
Yeah, there's some conjecture on mobile games. Let's face it, there are some good mobile games out there even today. It's it's just another platform. But yeah, I hear you.
It's a very if you want to start making mobile games, it's such a bottom feeder type of place to be. And what I mean by that is not that you're less of a person or less of a developer, but most of the time you're making games that are going to put these ads in it. And the only way you're going to get paid is by putting an ad in your game. And 90% of the times the ads are going to feed players to the top games. So you're making a game that's essentially feeding all the players to your competition, and that's how you're making money. And it just makes no sense to your brain about how, like, from a monetary point of view, why you were even doing this. After a while, you just start thinking to yourself, why am I making a game that's just literally taking people away from my game and giving them to like the game that's my competition, essentially?
Yeah, I could see how that would be a tiring outlook to have.
Yeah. And then on top of that, every game developer that's making a game you're making a game, I'm making a game too. Oh yeah, what game are you making? I'm making a mobile game, and like then the conversation goes dead. It's like,
yeah, I know what you mean. It's just not as interesting to most people, at least developers.
Yeah, definitely. Developers are like, oh, okay. So you're one of those developers, and you're like, and I'm like, yeah, I guess. So it's kind of keeps on pushing you down, and it makes you somewhat. I don't know. It's an easy way to get depressed by making mobile games, I think.
Sorry to laugh, but I mean,
Yeah.
I do hear what you're saying. It's definitely not as motivating as a PC game.
Yeah. But in saying all of that, it's 100% a great place to start, because if you can break through that to some extent, you're like well and truly set up for going forward. And one of the things that I learned by making mobile games is that people basically do not read any instructions in games. So teaching people how to play a game without giving any written instructions is something you learn really, really well by making mobile games.
That's huge. Because people just don't read in games.
No, that's right. But every indie developer that makes a PC game, that's the first thing they do. They put like 100 lines of text, and that's how you learn how to play the game. And you get through all that text, and you're like, how do I play this game? I kind of, was it somewhere in that text? I just clicked yes.
Yeah, no, I'm the same person. I do that when I test games too, because not that I don't care. It's just that I know that other players aren't going to be reading it, so why should I?
Yeah. Well, you go back and read it if you fall in love with the game and you want to know all the ins and outs about the game, and then you start doing like research in the game. But you don't do that initially. That's not how you start off a game. You kind of get to that after a period of time.
Especially that first screen when you don't even know if you're going to like the game yet.
Mm.
So if we back up a little bit, now you started mobile games, and what kind of training did you have before that? Is it like personal YouTube training, or did you go to school for computer science or anything like that?
No, I'm completely like non-trained. I'm just I pick it all up as I go.
So are you more of a game design forward developer, or is it something else that drew you in? I know that your programming is your strong suit, but design is so closely tied to programming.
I would say that a game design is my strongest point. Like I'm really good at visualize. I'd say that coding's my second strongest suit, and I'm learning a lot about 3D modeling and stuff as I've been going forward. Like that's something that's starting to interest me more than coding nowadays, but that's probably a later on topic. But
yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just trying to gauge what type of developer you are, and I think I've kind of guessed, because I'm very much the same way, where I played games and just, I was always looking for holes in the collisions and trying to figure out how much coyote time you had, and I didn't know what I was doing, but that's what I was doing. I was testing games instead of playing them, even as a child. And that's what I found fun, and finding Easter eggs and cheats, and just breaking games. Essentially, that's what I was into. Yeah, and I never grew out of that at all.
No,
are you the same way?
Do. Yeah, 100%. I start a game and I get into the whole part of I'll always go the wrong way, see where this goes. Do I die here? And where's the hidden things in the game? Because most good game designs now, they get you through 90% of the game, and then they show you, like, give you the easiest trophy at the end of the game. So then you want to play through it and get all the other all the other little collectibles, through the rest of the game. But you give the easiest one right before the end. So they go, oh, hang on, I didn't know that there was things for me to collect. Oh, now I'll go and play all the way through it again. Oh, like that's like the simplest design thing you can do in a game to make people play.
Honestly, I never thought about it that way. That's really good, though.
Yeah, but I always go try and find those things first in the first level, so that way I don't have to play through it a second time if I don't want to.
Yeah, I definitely had some completionist attitudes when I was a kid, and I've kind of gotten away from that. I just don't have the time anymore.
Yeah, well, and that's what draws me to indie games a bit now too, is that I've got the time to play through a 5-hour indie game. I've got the time for that. I don't have 60 hours to play through whatever other game it is that's out there, like that big AAA title.
Yep. No,
So,
it's very difficult to find the time to finish a AAA game, and also the AAA games just aren't as good as they used to be. Or
no,
maybe
they've
that's
kind
just
of
me.
no. I think they've found what works, and they're scared to go outside that box anymore because they like there's so many AAA games that have completely failed because they've pushed it too far and not sold any copies. And like that can just destroy a AAA company. You think about they've probably invested $1 billion of man hours into that game. And then if it doesn't make back the $1 billion plus, then that company can very well go bust almost. Cyberpunk is probably like a good example where that was buggy, but they invested so much time into the game, but then all of a sudden it nearly crashed and burned. Like they're coming back from it now, but
Yeah, they were hanging on by a thread for a bit there.
Yeah.
And what's funny is that out of the few AAA games that I actually played, I did enjoy that one. Of course, I bought it like a year later when it was on sale for half price, and most of the bugs were worked out. But then again, I had to stop playing again recently because a recent patch makes it crash for me. Maybe it's because I'm playing it on Steam Deck, or I don't know what it is. Something about the controls or something were updated and now it crashes. But it's one of those things. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
You're just for me. I'm definitely better off with the indie side of things. Not only are they not $60 typically, but you get more enjoyment out of them. I feel like even if it is a smaller experience, and some of them aren't that small either. Like Valheim is like a really big experience. I'm still playing it years after it came out. Of course I don't play very often.
Yeah, that was very popular. Cult of the Lamb, have you played that?
I haven't actually played that one. Some of these indie games that get like super, super popular, I just kind of watch from the sidelines because they don't need my sale at this point. What's that?
Dave the Diver is another one that was.
Oh, I didn't
popular.
play that. Although that one's not an indie game.
It is kind of technically because it was. There's a very kind of weird line there, but it was made by like a couple of guys, and then it got published by a company. So then that technically doesn't make it an indie game, does it?
Well, there was a whole lot of dispute on that one because it won an award, even though it was like published by this massive company.
Yeah.
But you know what? Fall Guys was the same way, where everyone was like, "Oh, it's an indie game." It's like, how is that an indie game? I don't know if you remember that one.
Yeah. Well, I think that people are identifying indie games by not being a AAA game. So it's either a AAA game or if it's an indie game. But we need like a middle class of game. That's what we need.
The triple I or the double A.
Yeah, I don't know. Like none of them are really catching on as much as they should be. It needs to be like another name. But yeah.
It's confusing. I just saw a Twitter thing about I can't even remember the name of the studio because it's so new. But they're like devs from id Software that broke off and started their own thing, and they're like, "We're making this awesome AAA indie game." Like, you're doing what? And that was basically the response. Everyone's like, "What do you mean?"
Well, but they're not wrong though, because they're funded. So why isn't a AAA game? Because it's not an indie game anymore. So they're kind of honest in that point of view.
Well, they're self-funded, I think, is the deal. So
yeah, but
technically they're publishing it themselves, so they're the publisher, so they're indie. I don't know. The whole thing is kind of a mess when you bring in ex AAA devs, and I'm sure that they are going to find funding if they need it, things of that nature.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Oh, we could argue about this for days.
Yeah, let's get back to your developer timeline, we'll call it, right? So here you are playing games, and then you decide you're going to do mobile games. Now, I'm just making an assumption here. Did you pick up Unity at that point?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Unity back then was, I think, the only one that would publish to Apple and Android at the same time. So it
That
was the
yeah,
easy
that sounds
choice.
right.
Yeah.
Yep. I think a lot of people made that choice around that time.
Yeah, because it published to everything. It was, I know, it was what it was. And yeah, I still love Unity. I'm not one of I can understand why people are a bit annoyed with it and whatnot, but
Oh, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
after using Unity for a long time, it's a love-hate relationship for
Yeah.
anyone, I think. Unless you don't know anything about Unity, you probably have some things that you love and things that you hate about it.
Mm.
You know?
But I bet if anyone is a little bit older, you'd remember back that Unreal went through a similar thing to what Unity had back before. I don't know, back a while though. I think Unreal Engine 4 kind of did something, and everyone went to Unity because of what Unreal Engine 4 did. I don't know. I can't remember all the bits and pieces of it, but I know that there was a hate thing for Unreal at the time.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly either. I mean, my timeline's a little bit earlier than that, where I think UE3 had just dropped a free SDK for the first time in when I was graduating college, or I had just graduated college. Or no, it was the year that I was graduating. But at the same time, Unity was at Unity 2, and no one knew what Unity 2 was. So,
Yeah. But I think that was the catalyst of what helped Unity grow at the time was how Unreal treated people. So
yeah.
because they had Unreal had the market, they owned the engine market at the time, and yeah, Unity just come in and just said, "Hey, we'll take that."
And have you played with Unreal at all?
No,
It's a mess. It is. I mean, don't get me wrong. Unity can be a mess too. But I mean, the sometimes you just have to restart the software just because the UI starts glitching out on you.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, I mean, at least Unity doesn't. Well, Unity does do that sometimes, but there's workarounds where you don't have to restart it completely. Mostly, I'm thinking about the animator window where all of a sudden you just can't see your animations. Where'd they go? Like you just have to close the window and reopen it. Unity bug. Anyone who does anything in Unity learns the phrase Unity bug before too long, because there's a lot of Unity bugs.
Yeah, there is a lot of, and is you could go from an update to an update, and all of a sudden something was working and then it's not working.
Oh yeah.
One of my favorite things that Unity did was give you the Unity Hub, which then allowed you to stay on a stable version, but then you could then open a new project in a newer version of Unity. So if you were happy with where that game was and you weren't too far away from releasing or whatever, you had that all kind of there for you to use, and then you could.
I like Unity Hub, but also
Yeah.
not to cut you off. I like Unity Hub, but also it's like if you're trying to do like old builds, you can't find them there. You got to go to the Unity website and like search this massive list for looking up old builds, and like if you're trying to mod a game or something like that, it's like whoa, there's a lot of Unity builds out there.
Yeah. But I mean, they're still available, so that's the great thing.
Yep. It's becoming more and more of a great thing now that people are talking about like not even using Unity 6 when it comes out because of all the new changes and stuff like that. But we'll just have to see where it goes, like they're kind of doing the same thing where they're just like, oh well, we've got these ideas. Oh, you don't like them? Well, we'll do something else and see how that goes, But
yeah. But back to the story of
sure.
your stuff. So Unity was the engine that I did, and then I released like a lot of mobile games, like a lot of them. And I kind of got sick of game development for a bit because it just started to be like, I know so much. I can do this really quickly, and I don't really. One thing I realized is I actually don't care about mobile games, and and I thought, well, if I and I had like this epiphany one day. I woke up and I'm like, if I don't care about mobile games, how am I meant to make a game that people care about? Like
Sure.
it makes no sense. Like I'm just knocking out these games and these ideas, and yeah, no, I don't. I would never play a mobile game. Like I tried to sit down and play some to see what people like, and I couldn't work it out. So I was just like, nah, this isn't for me. I'm going to make a big game. So, and around this time too, I started getting into doing something similar to what you're doing at the moment, doing some podcasting and like promoting other indie developers. And I think indie developers are really good at promoting other indie developers, but
Yeah.
it's hard work because and I appreciate being on here because a lot of the time indie developers can be a little bit brattish, almost like I deserve this spotlight. I deserve this, like I've worked on my game. I deserve, and there's some really nice guys out there. But as soon as the guys get somewhat of a bit of a head or an ego, they can turn quite quickly. But
Yeah.
anyway, I was doing that with another group, doing that kind of stuff, and I had like a person, I won't name them, but we decided to build a game together that was going to be a horror game. And so this was going to be my first big game. It was going to be this horror game. It was kind of like this problem that came about where I was building 90% of the game. Apparently we were halves in the game, but they weren't doing anything. They were doing no building, nothing,
Yeah, a one-sided relationship.
It was very one-sided kind of thing. And I just thought, no, I can't do this. Like hypothetically, I could have finished this game, but then I have to give half of it away to someone that's not even putting in. So I can't take the game now. Like I'm a part way into the game. I can't take the game and claim it as my own because it wasn't my own idea. That's not fair. So I've either got two options. That's like keep building this game and give away part of it, or just finish up on this game and start something that's completely my idea.
Yeah. No, I think that story resonates probably with most of our audience here on this podcast. I know it resonates with me. You end up inevitably having a partnership and they don't always work out. I mean, it'd be great if your first partnership worked out, but most of the time you end up learning that the person is not who you thought they were. They don't do things the way you expect them to. All the expectations are out the window after a while, and then you're left trying to pick up the pieces.
Well, it's like the start of making a game. When you make a game at the start, everyone's super enthusiastic, and then you get into the grind of building that game for that 2-year, 3-year period of whatever, when you're doing all the little bits and pieces that are just tedious. And that's when you see who you're really working with. That's the period you can catch. You kind of work out what it is that it,
Yeah, people change. And when you're, in the trenches of game development, that's when you change. That's what happens.
Yeah.
It's probably a good idea to do like a 72-hour game jam with someone that you're going to have a partnership with. That's what I think. Because if they can't hold their shit together during the 72-hour crunch, then it might not be worth it.
Oh, that's a good tip. I like it.
But then again, you might never talk to that person again because of the 72 hours you spent together.
Yeah, well, that's true. But and so the idea of this whole group that we started was it was meant to be like a after hours kind of place for because indie developers obviously want to go. Like I always thought.
Was this in person?
Yeah, no. It was a Discord community. Okay.
Sure.
So indie developers, obviously, we all like working on our games, and I always thought it'd be really cool if you had like a pub or a tavern or something that indie developers, like once they finish game development, they could go and chill out and talk to each other about stuff that, you still got a bond of indie games, but you can kind of a relaxing place away from, this is not all business anymore. This is kind of, we can just chill out for a bit. So I created that like Discord server that had that kind of community. But I forgot one thing that these people everyone's like at different time zones. So I might be kind of starting my work for the day and they're already kind of finished their work for the day. So they're all kind of wasted or whatever. And then the community just turned into a cesspool of, like, it was bad. It turned out bad. It was a bad idea. Like, don't start that idea. Because people started kind of getting all involved in, like, they weren't there to be supportive anymore because everyone, how drunks can be a bit nasty or whatever. They were just,
Sure.
And it was not a great idea. So anyway, I moved away from all that community and surrounded myself with better people. Like I started the Radiobush Discord, and we kind of don't have like a huge drinking culture and craziness. There's still a little bit. You got to have fun and games, but you got to work out where to have. The Discord's really hard to work out what that line is. If you're setting up a community, if you've on Discord, you have this kind of idea of, I want it to be fun, but then everyone's version of fun is way different. So you can either have like a dead community that no one turns up to, or you have to have a little bit of fun, but you got to work out where the line in the sand is before people get to a part where it becomes offensive and nasty and people don't like it.
Right.
So yeah, that I've learned that along the way of where to build a community, how to build that community group. Now I think I've kind of worked it out. So yeah, and I don't know. I think I've lost my way a little bit here in this whole story of whatever I do.
Oh, that's okay. so to get back on track here, so you went from making mobile games to PC games, and then is Light Haze World your first PC game, or was there any? Okay.
Well, that's what I was going to do. In that community, we started doing this horror game that fell apart, and then I moved into Light Haze World, which was the idea of a puzzle game. It was meant to have a little, because the original story for Light Haze World was we're going to have a puzzle game, and then we're going to have a little bit of sword fighting or something, so Zelda, but more puzzle based. And then as I started building that idea, people were like, why are you going to even have 10, 15% like combat when you can just have just puzzles? Because I like the idea except for the combat. And I'm like, you're not wrong. Like, I like the idea except for but I thought I needed to put combat in to make everyone interested in the game. So I removed the idea of combat.
Well, it's interesting because non-combative games are kind of on the upswing. It's more and more trending every year that people are like, why do games have combat? Yeah,
that's 100% right. So we went, well, I want to make a game where you can explore a world, you can do some puzzles. If you don't want to do that puzzle, you can come back to it, and also in this, like, there are some gates in the game, but the gate puzzles are relatively not easy, but they're a light challenge, where then there's some puzzles that are like completely harder, but they're not compulsory kind of. They're just like side quests if you want. So if you want to do that, you can. Otherwise, you can keep proceeding through the game without having to worry about those really hard puzzles, because I find that some puzzle games, I get like a third of the way through, and then the puzzles get to like a point that I can't progress in the game anymore. And
Sure.
I don't know why. Like, why do we have to be that hard? And
I think that's a good point.
Mm,
Because sometimes, I mean, almost all the time, you hit a puzzle that you can't beat, and then that's the end of the game for you. And that's, I mean, I guess it makes the people who can beat the game feel better, maybe. But you know, I don't know. I think everyone could feel good.
yeah. Well, you didn't get the Easter egg in the demo. I was really disappointed about that. But
Oh, was there an Easter egg that I missed?
well, did you get at the end of the demo? There's like a box there. If you got enough coins, you get the Easter egg.
No, I did not have enough. I was like, maybe the coins are on the boat.
No, that was my when we went back to earlier where I was telling you about how you put the thing at the end of the game to make people play through it again. That was that.
I thought I had all the coins, but I must have missed one or two because I was like, I'm almost there.
Yeah, so no, they're pretty well hidden for the super collector. A big part of the game too was to add collecting into the game, because I don't know, I've got a compulsion if I'm playing like a Lego game or something. You go through and collect every single coin that I can collect.
I did find one that was completely occluded by a tree, so I was proud of myself for that.
Yeah. But yeah, the game started as lots of things, but it finding our way. It was actually when I was talking to you, because we had like a way different graphic style back in the day.
That's right.
Yeah, and then you told me something, and I can't even remember what you told me, but it was something along the lines of like to make cool graphics, it should be like you should be 70% one style, and then you put like a different style to that to kind of give it that weird kind of balance.
Yeah, I think you kind of had like a 50-50 thing going before, and
Yeah.
I thought you needed to lean more in one direction or the other, I think was the advice that I gave. But paraphrasing.
Well, something along those lines. So we made it low poly, but then we decided to paint all the textures on the ground. So the ground, because having a low poly ground looks kind of terrible. It's just really boring, and you're just having like a plain matte green kind of, that's sometimes too much.
It can be hard to make that interesting for sure.
So by having like a kind of a different gradient on the ground, and that's what gave us that different kind of texture looking thing, but we didn't have to go and paint every tree, which would have been just impossible for like a small team of people to achieve.
Yeah. Now on YouTube, I'll post video footage, but for people who are just listening, can you try to describe the art style a little bit? I know you said low poly.
It's low poly, isometric. Oh,
yeah, it's a fixed camera angle, right?
Yeah, it's isometric camera angle, but it's not like true isometric. It's kind of, I don't know, but it's platformer type of game. But like I said, everything's like matte colors except for the ground that's then painted in like different textures and stuff like that to give it just a little bit more depth. I don't know how to describe it better than that.
No, it's great. The camera scrolls with the player, but the angle doesn't change, and you can't rotate the camera or anything like that. So the angle's fixed. And there's a lot of environmental models that are low poly, where the shaders are all flat one color shaders for the most part. And then I think some things like maybe the plants have little tiny details, right?
No, they're all low poly.
Yeah.
They are all low poly, and it's just done with lighting and things like that to give it a little bit more
I see
texture.
that.
Yeah. Everything is just plain colors.
Yeah, no, it works really well. And then the music on top of that, it really helps sell this vibe. It's almost like a dream. It reminds me a little bit of this film called Waking Life, where everything is very dreamy. Of course, this is a little bit more grounded than that film, but it's that same sense of like you don't know how grounded the world is, and that's
Well,
part of the mystery. I think.
okay. I'll give you a bit of insight into the story because I did say that the character has anxiety.
Sure.
So the story of Light Haze World, it's a pretty simple one. But he's got his best friend, his dog Chewy, and his dog is hungry on the way home after them playing in the park. He's playing with his best friend Chewy, and he's going to they're playing at the park, and they're going on their way home, and Chewy's a bit hungry. They decide to go to the mall. The mall's name is Light Haze World. But the main character Nim gets very anxious around people, and he goes into the mall and gets overwhelmed and passes out. Now, the whole game is him going through the mall, but he's recreated the mall as like a fictitious world that he travels through.
That's interesting.
If that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it's almost like he's imagining things, gamifying the world around him in a sense to help deal with his anxiety.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And that's the whole. So when you said it doesn't feel grounded, that's kind of perfect. That means you got the right vibe.
Oh yeah, no, and the music really helps sell it. It's kind of like this 80s with lots of washes and like synth kind of sounds. Nothing chiptune or anything like that. It's very modern, but at the same time very subtle, and it just works really well.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's the music. This is the music, guys. His name's Tweak Lab. If you want to go and check him out, he's got a fair bit of stuff on Spotify and YouTube, those kind of things.
And did he do your trailer music as well?
Yes.
Yeah, no, the trailer music sounds excellent.
Cool. But he started off in TVs and stuff like that.
Oh wow, interesting.
So this is his first game, but he's been doing like lots of TVs, shows and stuff like that, adding little bits of music to TV. I don't think anything that you'd see in the States. It's kind of like
probably not
B-grade Australian comedies, TV shows. But
that's perfect because I've always thought as a composer that making music and making music for games are so vastly different that it's more akin to making a soundtrack than it is to making actual music, because it's in the background. It's not front and center. When people listen to music, they're listening to the music, they're listening to the words, they're focusing on that music. Well, if they're listening to it, if they're doing something else while they're listening, that's a different story. But with games, they're always doing something else while they're listening. So the idea is to make the music work with what you're exhibiting in the experience. And like, that's not easy to do. There's a lot of composers out there that know composition, but they don't know how to make it work for a game.
Yeah. And the cool thing is, like, I met up with him in Tasmania, where I used to live before we moved to Melbourne. That's another story. But he was like just self-taught into music as well. Like, he's got no formal music training or anything like that, which
interesting
is, I think it kind of works too with our team having. I don't know if someone came in, I kind of worry if someone came in that was actually really trained, if they'd fit in, because we're so like rogue on our quest to make this game. Are we going to, if like someone came in and they were like really, really good at like formally trained, would it fit in with this different style that we do?
The way I see it is that even if you're formally trained at something, you're going to have to teach yourself afterwards, because you can't just stay in school your whole life, and you have to keep learning. So if someone only knows what they learned at school, that's a red flag to me right there.
Yeah.
But
no,
if someone has been to school, like, that's not necessarily a red flag. They have to keep learning after school. Otherwise, they'll get left in the dust. Honestly, with solo development and stuff like that, you get so used to having to learn, like pick up new things all the time, that you get good at it. You get good at being outside of your comfort zone. And if you specialize in something and that's what you did at school and you haven't really learned anything outside of that, then you're kind of addicted to your comfort zone at that point.
Yeah, no, I can see where you're going with that. That's pretty spot on. And I think we're all super passionate about the project, which is, I think if you have that, you'll learn anything along the way to make it happen.
Sure.
A lot of, if you've just formally trained in it, say your like ideal game was an MMO game, and then I say I'm looking for a coder or someone to come in and do some development, and that was their ideal game, and they come into a puzzle game and they're like, oh yeah, I can do this. But their minds into that MMO game, are they really going to kind of commit?
Right.
In the love sense.
And you can really see the passion in Light Haze World, even just in the demo. It shows.
Thank you.
You can kind of tell that the main character means something to the developers.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Also the land, like where the actual you play through is based a lot on environmental like places in Tasmania. So
interesting.
You can actually go and walk these paths that he's walking up. Or what?
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. So that was like where we got the inspiration for a lot of how the worlds look and are formed.
And how about the anxiety portion of that? Is that something that you've dealt with in your personal life then?
Well, it came about, that's kind of where the character came about. I was asking my son one day, I said, oh, we should make a video game. This is kind of when I was in this lost moment of my development career.
Exiting mobile space?
In kind of also in when I was in this horror game thing, and I'm just not sure where I was going to go.
Sure.
I said, oh, do you want to make a game with me? Like, draw me a character and I'll make a game about it. And so he drew the character that is now known as Nim.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
So he drew that, and he loves puzzle games, but he's such an anxious dude. And I kind of wanted to kind of tap into that to some extent, to like show him that you don't have to be afraid of it's kind of like for people like him, that you don't have to be afraid of this world. Like you've got like a superpower. You can do puzzle games that half the world can't do, so
wow.
You're going to succeed in life. And so it's kind of, I mean, it's not like just designed for him, but he kind of inspired the direction of it to some extent.
No, that's a really strong motivational message. I think that adding something like that to the DNA of your game is perfect.
Yeah, cool. But, and going back to conventions, where like I'm addicted to conventions. But like we had kids coming up that were just they weren't clearly into like Fortnite or games like that. And then they would come up and play Light Haze World, and they're like, I love this game, Mum. Can we buy it now? Like, I'm sorry, it's not out yet. But like, you know what I mean? Like
that's really great.
Yeah, they were super excited about it,
I mean, kids give the best feedback. I mean, don't get me wrong. Sometimes it's not what you want to hear, but it's the most honest feedback most of the time.
100%.
They have no filter.
My youngest, so my oldest son he's the one that was involved in this, and he's into puzzle games. My youngest boy completely tells me my game's crap, and he's going to get. But I don't take him as like I take short because I mean his favorite game is Roblox. So I mean I don't think he's really got like the true pedigree to kind of rate games. To be fair,
Sure. He's got to see a few more games before he can actually determine what's great and what's not great.
Yeah,
But like I mean, your own son more than anyone else, so you probably have a great idea of what's actually going on. But yeah, it's when when you test your game in public to strangers and strangers' kids, like it's kind of nerve-wracking because they can be really, they just say what's on their mind, for better or for worse.
well, one of the best compliments that we got was the games. I didn't mind the game, but the demo was a bit short. And I go, what? And they go, yeah, they just finished playing through the whole game. And they go, the demo was a bit short. I was like, oh, what do you mean? They go, well, we've only been playing for 5 minutes. I said, you've been playing for 25 minutes. They're going, oh, really? I didn't realize I was playing for that long. So having people not lose time playing a game, I think that's one of the best compliments you can get. Like, oh, we didn't realize it was 25 minutes or yeah.
No, and I think that's a pretty good time frame for a demo. I know that there's a lot of demos these days that are getting longer and longer, but I think generally speaking, 20 to 30 minutes is the perfect time. And if someone wants to play more and that's their only complaint, that's a good thing. Because that's what a demo's supposed to do.
Yeah, 100%. Like, oh, yeah, we're going to go and do some more. But
because if the game was out, you're ready to hit the purchase button after that, right?
Yeah.
You had a good time, you want more. And in your case, the demo is completely different. Well, not completely different, but different enough to, it's a different environment. The puzzles are different. It's a good starting point for what you're going to be dealing with when you purchase the game, but it's different enough where you don't have to replay anything once you've purchased it.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. I hate it in puzzle games. You replay the same first level, and you're like, why can't you just build that into the game or whatever?
Now, do you have a list of puzzle games that were inspiration for you on hand, or is that something you'll have to scratch your head over?
No, 100%. I have that. So I think you'll kind of get the connection once I say that the game. What games do you have? Like, I'll ask you first. Just
I thought of Chip's Challenge. I think, and maybe not completely because Chip's Challenge is a 2D game. It's pixel art, but some of the elements of moving blocks and stuff like that, and just making sure things are in the right spot to get further. But yeah, that's not exactly a great explanation. What's yours?
Okay, so my explanation is, I wanted to make something as fun as the Lego games. So you can probably see that with the character and the collecting of coins, and kind of the way that the camera kind of operates is a bit Lego game like. Well, another, like the worlds to kind of look a little bit like Sackboy's Adventure, with those kind of interesting worlds kind of thing. But then the puzzles and that to kind of be a little bit more similar to The Witness, and kind of squash all that together and you get Light Haze World.
So that makes sense why I didn't come up with any of those when I was judging the game, because I've only think I've ever watched someone play a Lego game, and that was, I think, the Indiana Jones one. That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And then I never got around to playing The Witness. I just never got to it. I know I saw some videos of it, but videos and puzzle games are kind of weird because you don't get the feeling of the puzzle when you're watching a video a lot of the times.
Yeah.
And then the other one, you said Sackboy's Adventure. I've never heard of that one.
It's the follow-on to what is it? Little Big Planet.
Oh, okay. Honestly,
So
I never got around to playing that one.
Sackboy's Adventures more in that same top-down or kind of off to the side camera. It's not a 2D game anymore. Like it's what is it? 2.5D is what Little Big Planet is. This is like just an open world more so.
I see. Yeah, I remember when Little Big Planet came out, and like I had some friends that were playing it, and I was a little bit jealous because I wasn't invited to play. And it's like, I didn't have a PS3 at the time. I think I just graduated college, so I was pretty broke. There wasn't a lot of work available at the time. And I kind of missed out on everything after the PS2 as far as consoles go. Just too expensive, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I got them all now. Like, I don't know. I got them all. And I think if you're an inspiring game developer, definitely go and play games still. Because I think when I started on my journey and I told you about the mobile development, all that stuff, I kind of stopped playing games for so long.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to get into game development, and then you kind of forget about games and you don't play games for a period, and then you're like,
it's more fun to make them.
Yeah, it is more fun to make them, but you kind of forget about all the things you loved about the games, and you start not including those ideas in games.
I know what you mean. You get caught up in the the building of the thing rather than the enjoying of the thing.
Yeah, and then enjoyment falls out of the game instead of having. So when I was trying to work out this project in particular, I spent, I think, about a month just playing games constantly to see what aspects of games that I really liked. And those 3 games, I don't know, I was kind of wondering. The Witness I like a lot, but it's in a first person point of view. And because it's low poly in a first person point of view, it kind of would give me headaches in it. I've found it really hard to play for long periods of time. As much as I loved the game, it just was hard to kind of enjoy because of the low polyness of the environment. And I thought, well, if someone made like the Lego game but made it more like Witness style puzzles, this would be fantastic. And and then the Sackboy was just something else I was playing at the time. So those 3 games in particular inspired this quite a lot. And I don't think there's many other puzzle games. Obviously there's puzzle games that have similar ideas of this, because there's no point starting a project and having completely fresh ideas that no one understands, because
that's very difficult. I've done that. Still working on Retro Space Paul.
but I still think that's got like a Sonic pinball vibe to it. You know what I mean? Or
yes, I was definitely playing Sonic Spinball when I wrote down the idea.
So yeah, but if you make something completely you have to train people on, it's so much harder to make a game because people don't understand the rules, and you're making, then you've kind of best off building on foundations that people already understand in video games.
And also the marketing and the community is already there, and there's so much to benefit from kind of taking inspiration from games that already exist. Yeah,
I agree with that. I don't know, what else have you got for me? Is that?
Well, we have been going for a while here. I don't have anything that I really need to do. If you needed to get out the door or something, we could.
No, I've got no. I didn't know. I meant like, do you have any other questions? I'm happy to talk for like 4 hours, but I don't know what. Like, I'm like, oh, where else am I meant to be with?
No, sure. I mean, well, we've pretty much caught up on your development timeline.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice that you would give to aspiring developers or even developers that have been in it for a long time?
I think playing games. I think I just said that one. Playing
Sure,
games is.
sure, but you can go in depth into that.
I really okay. So for level development, why I don't understand why people try and design a level. You can go into like a game like Minecraft, build out a level, and then you can play it and see what you think of it before you, even if it's a 2D game, you can build it up in the clouds, whatever, and then you can see what you think of it before you even have to pick up a computer and do any coding or anything. That's a really fun way to kind of do some level design or concept. Like, is this going to be fun to play, or is this just like super dumb? Like, I don't know. I think using game, and there's a lot of games that actually got built-in editors in them, so you can go and make levels. I think Sackboy might have. I know that Little Big Planet used to have that. Yeah, I don't know. I think even maybe Call of Duty's a new Call of Duty. Even you can go and make levels in it if you want to make like more. Like, why not use those things that are available than build a level from scratch? Like, I mean, it's a great way to do development like that. Talking to other developers is really inspiring. I find like having this conversation with you has made me. I just want to go and do some more stuff now. But I think with other developers, you see what they do, and then you're like, "Oh, I'm going to do it." It's like it's not like a competition, but it's like a friendly. How would you put it? Like
it's like a synergy. Like there's motivation that happens. There's this energy between two people that are trying to get things done, that even if they're two totally different things, as long as they're, both developers and they're nice to each other, that's all you really need.
Yeah. And especially if they're in similar type of games to you.
Yeah, that definitely helps.
That definitely helps a bit too, because then you can figure stuff out. Oh, how did you build this camera angle or whatever? It's pretty helpful. I don't know, but I've just started getting it. This is probably a whole other subject I've studied on, but I've just started getting into a little bit of AI for helping out with coding and stuff like that. And there's like so many people that are so against it, but I don't understand why. Like, why do we have to do things the hard way? Is the objective to build a really cool video game, or is the objective to build a game the slowest way possible? Like,
so I mean, this is like a whole nother topic of discussion. It totally is, and I'm definitely on the anti-AI side of things, where like I tried using it and I didn't like the results, and I said, why am I doing things that are making it harder for me? And I could see why someone coming from the other way would be like, oh, this made my job easier, I'm going to use it. Why they would do that, I totally understand that. The legality part of it aside for now, because hopefully they fix that, where they're the whole scraping of art that's copywritten, like that shouldn't have been coded that way in the first place.
I'm not suggesting. I'm talking more from the coding point of view, not art.
Sure. And I mean, my background's in art, so it's like, and honestly, I haven't really tried to use it for coding stuff, because if it's just scraping Google, I mean, that's what I'm doing. So why would I want to change what I'm doing if I'm already good at searching Google? You know what I mean?
Because it's a lot quicker than searching.
Is it? Because I've seen some really bad code snippets from ChatGPT or whatever.
Oh, that's
you know what I mean?
Yeah, it can be worse. It can be better. But I think
I'd rather
help.
I mean, and maybe it's just me personally. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm sure it can help people, but for me personally, I'd rather see the forum post and then see the communication between two people trying to figure it out, and that just has so much more substance to it to me. And then
think
I don't
if you're
know.
starting out, do not go to AI, because I think you have to be able to look at the code that the AI generates and then understand if it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
You need that kind of understanding. If you're starting out and you're like, hey, chatbot, build me this, and then it just builds it and it doesn't work, and you can't work out why, then you probably created more headaches for yourself. But if you can understand the code and you say, hey, build me this, and it goes, here it is, and you're like, oh, you almost won, but you missed this bit.
Yeah.
Then there is advantages to it.
Now, I'm the type of person who I am still learning. I've been still learning for over 10 years now, but I'm still learning, right?
Yeah.
I'm all completely self-taught. I went to school for art. I didn't go to school for computer stuff. I mean, I did a little bit of ActionScript in school, but no one uses ActionScript anymore. So
I don't even know what it is.
Oh, that was for Flash. You remember when
Okay.
Flash was a
Yeah,
thing?
yeah. Yeah.
That's the language they used. But for
Okay.
me, I stick to the code base that I've already written in other games. So there's a lot of copy and pasting of my own code that goes on. I'm I'm not very quick to pick up new packages or new things that Unity is like, oh, this is the quickest, best way to do that. I'm like, okay, but the way that I've been doing and the way that I know still works. So I'm just going to keep doing that until it stops, because at some point during Retro Spaceball, I had to figure out what architecture was, right? Because I was just kind of going by the seat of my pants, writing code and referencing variables from other scripts just willy-nilly.
Yeah.
Apparently that's a bad idea because your game will work, but you'll hit these decompile times that all of a sudden you change a piece of code and it takes an hour to decompile. Like you're stuck in the mud at that point. There's no moving forward until you clean up your architecture. And then you learn those tricks and then you stick with those because they work. So, but ChatGPT isn't going to know my architecture style. You know what I mean?
That's true. I'm just saying, like, I'm saying things like that. I've also got Sniplet, which it's you can get different versions of this type of thing, but it's basically like a little code. Like you keep snippets of your code, the ones you use all the time, in like another program, and then you don't have to go searching through all your code for that. You just go to your
sounds really usefle.
It is really useful.
Check that out. I've never heard of this before.
I think it's like $1 if you're on the Windows platform. In their store, it's spelled SNIPLET. That's a little program. It's like a pay once $1 and then you've got it forever. And then you just so you copy and paste whatever code it is, and then you put like a little bit of a heading on it and what that piece of code will do. And then when you want to use that, you just go in there, click on that, copy and paste, and away you go.
I wonder if there's a free alternative, because I know it's just $1, but I don't like paying money for stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't looked. I just bought that one because it was, sure. I was like, $1. You can have my $1. You made something cool. It's fine.
Yeah, no, it's $1.
Yeah,
that does sound like it would be useful. A lot more useful than searching your code base or going into another code base that you've written before and be like, what the heck did I write? Oh yeah, it was this.
And one thing I've been doing a lot for Light Haze World is now I'm self-taught with a lot of coding, so if I use the wrong terminology, please write disgusting comments to you, not me. So you write like your code for like something, and then you override it to. So, for example, when you finish a puzzle in the game, I'll have finish puzzle script, and then it will have in there a public virtual void of so it will have in there a public virtual void of puzzle complete, and then there'll be nothing in that underneath that, right? There'll be nothing
Okay.
in there. And then I write another code that will, instead of being a mono code,
Behavior.
behavior code, it will be just called you replace that bit with the finished puzzle script, whatever you called your finished puzzle script. And then you type in a public override on puzzle done, and then you can write that information in there.
Oh, okay.
So the reason that you do this is so that so if you're calling on that and then you want to communicate back to the other script that the puzzle is finished, it can then access, you don't have to change the lines of code in that other script. You can call the same methods and stuff like that. It's only something I've learnt a bit about in recent times in the last couple of years, but it makes it so much easier when you've got like different animation call them from the same like method statement. You don't want to have to rewrite those each time.
Right.
And yeah, it just saves you so much time.
Yeah. Little time savers like that, they mean a lot when you're really deep into it.
Yeah.
And it's funny because there's games that don't do that kind of stuff where everything is just like a switch statement with a bunch of different cases and stuff like that. And sometimes that works. Sometimes that's fine. It's whatever works is the answer, really, And if you find that you're wasting time, then there's probably a good way to fix that.
Well, yeah. I also found that coming from mobile games, going to like a large PC game, you don't realize how many resources that your game starts to use as your game grows in size.
Oh, yeah.
And all of a sudden, you build like a little mobile game that's got 3 levels or something, and you don't have to worry about stuff. You just dump stuff wherever and everything's cool. But then once you go to a bigger game that's got like 40 levels or something, and everything kind of gets confusing, and you can easily break things by just not linking the right thing here or there or whatever.
Or things don't scale as you intended.
Yeah. So kind of thinking of how you're going to scale a game up is very important. If it's going to be a big game, don't just start dumping stuff everywhere, because then you spend a big part of middle development reorganizing everything to to make it easier to work out what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's best to have. I know a lot of solo devs listen to this, and you're kind of a solo dev, and I'm kind of a solo dev. But when you're in it by yourself, it's still a good idea to have documentation. I know a lot of people kind of overlook that, or even with Retro Spaceball, I haven't looked at the game design document nearly as much as I should, and I should go back and update it, because there's a lot of things in the game that aren't in that document anymore, and that's kind of a bad thing. You have to keep updating that document as you make changes to the design and stuff like that. But the more that you have like on paper before you start developing, the better off you're going to be. That's one thing I've learned for sure.
Yeah.
Because if you can, like, let's say you're documenting code, right? You want to write out the features before you start coding it. You want to know exactly what that code's going to do, That way you have everything that it needs. And of course, as a designer, you're going to come across things like, oh, that would be better if I had had this idea earlier. And it's okay to add stuff like that. But the more you do that, the harder it gets.
Yeah. Well, that kind of brings me to probably my last point my helpful tips is, once you've decided on what the game is, definitely don't add to that scope. Kind of, you're best off, even if you kind of think of some better ideas, if the scope is something, don't keep on building that scope or you'll never finish the game. You've kind of got to just go, this is game one scope. I want it to, this is the ideas that I have. This is what it's going to be. Because at one stage in this game, we had like 20 levels and it was, I had like another 7 different puzzle designs that I've just taken out of the scope because it was becoming too much and too complicated and impossible to build almost.
And how many levels would you say you're planning for release? Just ballpark.
Okay. A lot.
Is that a hard question?
No, so the idea, I don't know, you probably got a little bit of a sense of this in the demo, but the demo has like 4 levels, correct? But there's kind of 2 levels that are big levels, and then there's like little caves. So we've got like 6 or 7 big levels in the game, but then each level has about 4 or 5 little caves in there. Okay. So you kind of go and explore little things around the world.
And then what kind of playtime are you shooting for in the release?
6 hours.
Okay. Yeah,
I think it has to be 6 hours.
Oh, yeah. You've got some determining factors there.
It can't be 2 hours because it can't be 2 hours or less because you get
the whole refund
policy going on. And it just, I mean, that's okay. I'm not against that. But also from my point of view, I want to, where you want to sell that. If it's a $2 game and it takes you 10 minutes to finish, is that okay? Maybe. But if you want to charge $20 for a game, it should be like 5 hours, kind of 6 hours long. I don't know. Is that kind of price point that you're going for too, where you want to give people like a decent amount of value for what they're buying?
Well, price point is a whole nother conversation. Is that about the price point that you're shooting for?
I think around the $20, $15 to $20 if we're talking US.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really hard decision to make. And then the market changes and people it's like a race to the bottom. So yeah, I think it's good to stand up for your game, but also it's good to make sure you make sales. So yeah,
I think always a lot of games are getting too expensive now. Indie games in particular.
What would you consider to be too expensive then? I guess it would depend on how long it takes to play and all that.
I think once they get to $25 US, that's too expensive for a 4-hour game.
Yeah, no, I agree. $25 is a hard sell, and unless it's like an IP that you like, it's a developer that they tried and tested before, But even then, I'm gonna wait till it's on sale personally.
Yeah, but then there's the other scale. Like if I sell it for $5, hoping to make up for a loss, like just sell like a huge quantity, and then there's a big problem with selling it for $5 because you can't put it up in price once it's $5 because you'll upset a lot of people. B, you can't. If you put it on sale for $5, say I put it on 50% sale and it's $2.50 now, you're just going to go, okay, that game's $2.50 on sale, but this other game over here that I really like is 50% off. So now it's actually gone from $20 down to $10. Yep. I can buy that for $5 any day. I'll just get the other game. So there's no like perceived value on a cheaper game. So
I agree.
You've got to kind of find that middle point that kind of works for people. And,
yep. And then you can hit the sale within their impulse range, right?
Yeah. That's right. If you hit the sale and say it's $20 US and you put it on sale for $10 and you go, oh, that's $10 off. That's a lot of money that I'm saving. Where, you know, a $7 game that's 50 cents is, 50% off. That's not a whole lot of saving. It's like $3.50, $3.75, whatever, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And each time you do a sale, people, you know, they look up what the lowest price was, and then they're waiting for that to get lower, and you know, it's a race to the bottom all of a sudden, right? So it's good to have some place to start, and then change as needed. If you realize that the price point's too high, you can lower it. You can change it with sales. You can have it on sale as every sale opportunity you get. You know, there's a lot you can do there. So I think $20 is a great starting point. And then if you get feedback saying 15, like you definitely think about it. But you know, it's up to the dev at that point. You know, it's your time that you're spending.
But there is a lot of games now that are coming out that is hitting that $25 US for an indie game. That's the starting price of them. And I just think that's way too expensive when, you know, that's almost half a AAA title's money, like in value. And everyone's starting to get a little bit too greedy in the indie market.
It's interesting for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and everyone's got their different point of view. I've not released yet, so I could be completely wrong. So,
yep. You just kind of have to see what it's like. Yeah.
But I think going back to the original question, I think having somewhere between 4 and 6 hours is a nice amount of time for a game to play. If that's what I kind of expect from an indie game to be around that length.
Yeah, especially something that's I don't know how to describe something that is like a singular path. You know, there's only one way to play the game. Of course, it's different when you have roguelites and you've got exploration games. The genre is going to change how long the average gameplay is.
Oh, 100%. But yeah, I think that's what we'll try and do. And yeah.
I think you're on the right track. You've done a great job so far. I'm excited to see what's coming in the future. Are you planning on updating the demo at all, or is the demo set and done?
I think the demo's set to where it's going to be now. It may get another update but every time I go and spend time on that's taking away from time from the game. Like we were having this conversation in our group the other day. It's like if I spend I could spend another couple of weeks doing some nice things to the demo, but I feel like everyone that plays a demo almost likes what it's, you know, they're not walking away from it going, oh, that was shit, you know, that
that's a good thing.
Yeah, they're kind of walking away going, yeah, that's pretty good. I kind of like what you've done there. Yeah, okay, I'll have another try of it or whatever. So if you're getting that reaction, is it worth making that better? I don't know.
That's a hard call.
Yeah, and then if the game's better than the demo, and then people play the game and go, oh, this is actually way better than the demo, and people go, oh, the demo was not too bad, then they're going to be like way more sold. No. I think about stuff way too much.
Oh no, any dev does, and there's just so many different like avenues of thinking when it comes to demos, and it always depends on the game, you know.
Yes, that's very true.
I think it's really polished. You know, I had a great time with the demo, and it definitely made me want to play the full game. It left me wanting to play more, and I'll definitely be picking it up.
Oh no, cool. What platform would you like to see it on? Last question.
Well, I purchased myself a Steam Deck when they were on sale. So I've been playing most games on Steam Deck, and I tested your demo on Steam Deck, and it works great. So yeah, Steam Deck is kind of what I've been playing games on. You know, my laptop is getting to the end of its life, and there's just not a lot of space on there. I mean, it only had 500 gigs to begin with, so I don't have room for games on there, unfortunately. Of course, a game like yours is much smaller than, you know, some of the bigger titles out there that are 100 gigs for a game. You know, it's like, yeah, I don't have space for that for sure. But on the Steam Deck, it's just games, so there's more space for games. But.
Yeah, I think the game would be really suited to like the Nintendo crowd. Like that's where
for Switch.
Yeah, Switch or whatever.
Yeah, I do have a Switch. I just, you know, honestly, I don't really buy as many Switch games anymore, especially since I got the Steam Deck.
I do like Switch. I'm thinking about getting one of those, but
it's really expensive. But like I said, I do enjoy playing on it. You know, like using the mouse pad is a little funky, and your thumbs will like you'll have muscle strain in muscles that you never thought you had. Right? You know, like it's a very strange experience. If you play more than like an hour or two using the mouse pad, you're gonna feel it in the morning.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's good for what I do, where I plug it into the wall, I sit down on the couch, and I just play there in the recliner, you know, and that's how I play games now.
But is a TV just like across the way from you?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is what people do now. They sit on the couch in front of their TV, and they might have like Netflix going, and then they'll play on their Steam Deck, or they'll play on the, you know, like I wonder how many Steam Decks actually leave the house, or Nintendo Switches leave the house. I reckon.
Well, the Switch can actually hold its battery, where the Steam Deck cannot.
Yeah, true.
You play the Steam Deck for a couple hours and it's dead. It doesn't really matter what you're playing. I mean, if you're not playing anything at all, then it's fine. But if you're playing games, then it's losing battery.
Oh, the Switch is fantastic for battery, really, considering the screen it has.
Yep. No, the only issues I have with playing the Switch mobile is that the Joy-Cons are just not comfortable.
They are not.
It's very lightweight compared to the Steam Deck. The Steam Deck is like a brick in weight comparison.
Yeah.
You know, like I wouldn't drop my Switch, but I feel like if I drop my Switch, it'd be better off than if I drop the Steam Deck.
Okay, well, that's we're going to see next time, is you doing a drop test on your Switch versus a Steam Deck.
No, I don't think so. I want to keep both of them around. I don't buy consoles very often. So when I bought the Switch, that was, like I said, the first console that I bought since PlayStation 2. So yeah, that was a long period of not having any consoles. But yeah, you know, I like the Switch. It's just, I don't know. It's not as easy as like Steam, right? Where you've got your whole library and you can play online with people, or, you know.
You can play online with the Nintendo.
You can.
But
it's just, it's different, right? Hopefully the game's cross-platform. But even when it is, people can usually tell that you're on a Switch because it's, at least the Switch that I have is wired, or it doesn't have a wired internet connection. It's wireless only. So like if I try to play like Rocket League or something like that on my Switch, like you can tell that the internet is crap. Although honestly, the internet isn't great playing wireless on the Steam Deck either. So that's kind of a moot point. But in general, I prefer to buy games on Steam rather than the eShop. And that's probably, you know,
it's really
compatibility.
I know, another topic altogether. We could talk for years. It's really interesting the amount of people that buy something on Steam that like, I've got Game Pass, and I've got friends that have Game Pass, and they won't open Game Pass to play that game. They'll go and buy the same game that just released today on Steam. And I'm like, well, why wouldn't you just play it on Game Pass? Like, you've got it for free there. If you like it a lot, then buy it on Steam, whatever. But to just go out and buy a game fresh out on Steam. Sometimes it's really interesting. And then I've also got other friends that go to Epic every week whenever the new free game comes out, and they'll get the free game, but they will not buy a game on Epic. They'll only buy it on Steam. Like Steam has this like hold over people's wallets that no other online company has.
Yeah. Well, I know I've been using Steam since like 2010 or something like that, or maybe earlier. So like, you know, you have that library. You're not really willing to just like switch to another thing. Although I know there are apps that like converge your libraries for you and stuff like that. But you know, I do download the free games off Epic every once in a while. I rarely play them, which is funny.
I like to collect them too. I've got so many on my Epic library.
Yeah, and then you know, I don't ever buy them from Epic. I mean, it's rare that I buy a game off of Steam, to be honest. Like if it's like indies aside, like I don't buy big games like hardly ever. And when I do, it's because it's on sale for half off and it's like 2 years old. You know, and it's the games that everyone really really liked when they came out, and then I'll like, well, I guess I got to try that when it's on sale.
Yeah, that's I'm really interested to see where because like Xbox, PlayStation with their free Game Pass or subscription model, where that kind of goes it's
kind of scary, right? Because well, you know, I actually talked to Ed Freeze about this and he actually helped create the original Xbox, right? He's old school guy, and it was like a game dev meetup, and we had a chance because he was doing a little talk for the group, and I had the opportunity to ask him a question. I asked him what he thought was this like either the scariest or most hopeful part of the future of the industry. And he didn't even bring up any hopes of the industry. He just went straight into the Spotification of the industry is what's scary to him. And I knew exactly what he meant. But for listeners, if you don't understand, that means if you're like a musician and you go to Spotify, you can get your music on there, but you're going to have trouble actually making any money off of it. And that's the scary part, right? And you can kind of see the same thing with Netflix, except it's kind of the opposite, right? Because you can't just get your film up on Netflix, right? There's this huge gate that's preventing indie filmmakers from getting onto Netflix. They literally have to make it big somehow else. And that's part of the reason why indie films just aren't making it these days. And there's less people making them because there's, you know, less funding, less ability to get seen. Like it's just not there anymore. And it's scary because indie films are, you know, they help push the industry just like indie games.
100% the same, but I don't think that I'm really scared for where you're gonna make money as an indie developer. And I mean, there's lots of game developers that like, I just want to make games for fun, and yeah, I do too. But I think you've got to work towards getting some kind of payment one day out of it. Otherwise,
absolutely.
Like you can only do it for so long as a hobby.
I think what a lot of devs do is that they basically build up their portfolio, and then they become easier to hire. They might not even finish the game that is on their portfolio that gets them the job that, you know, lets them not worry about money.
Yeah, maybe.
It does happen. It takes years and years and years to actually get a portfolio that people will hire you for, but it can happen. And I think that is a way to do it, but you pretty much need another job to help you do that, right? Because you can't just, you know, type away all day, all night without a job. You're not going to get anywhere. And, you know, a lot of people, they'll be like, oh, if you don't work full-time indie, then you're just a hobbyist. And I think that's not really the right way to look at it either. you can be a professional, like for me, I was a freelancer for a long time before I started doing game development. And then I started doing game development while I was delivering pizzas, working at picture framing studio. I was at call centers. I was just doing whatever jobs came my way, whatever was the best to make money. And I guess some people would call that hobbyist, but I was also making money freelancing. So I was kind of straddling that line. And so one day I got fired from the frame shop and my freelancing just took off. And then all of a sudden I've got the runway and I'm still haven't released the game yet, but it's making the game take longer. So there's, you really got to look at what you're doing and how you're going to do it. And it's going to be different for each game, I think, for each developer.
Yeah. And each I keep on thinking, oh, we need a platform like itch.io, but then there already is itch.io. And it seems to be getting down to like, I'm so scared to download games from there nowadays. It used to be
because the Discord hacks.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, that's scary. The way I look at it is that if there's like a community, there's YouTube videos, actual gameplay, like those are the signs of a real game. But if someone just comes up to you on Discord, first of all, it's spam. Like probably 98% of the time, it's spam. No one just goes up to you these days. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've actually gotten jobs that way.
Yeah.
So, but what I did was I made sure that the person on the other side was a human. And I didn't feel bad about making them do that. And I told them straight up that I didn't trust them until they convinced me that they were who they said they were.
Yeah, I'm quite rude now. I'm quite rude to people. Like they'll message me and go, hi, and I'll go, hey, what are you selling? Like I just straight into them and they're like, oh no, we're not selling you anything. We're just trying to offer you. I said, you're selling me something, delete.
I'm not quite that rude until I get, hey, can you help me with something? And then I'll say, probably not. And then they'll say, oh, I whatever the scam is. And then I say, oh, you worked on this game? That's funny because that game came out 3 years ago. You know what I mean? I'll look up what their scam is and I don't know, maybe I should just let them look stupid so they don't refine their scam. But it's really disappointing because you know that people get scammed and then it happens to your friends and then your friend is trying to scam you. It seems like, because their user account's been hijacked and they're trying to send you a game that is not, and you're just like, man, what do you do at that point? You can't like block your friend because you want them to get their account back. So, there are steps to take to help turn in someone who does that, but it's a big pain in the butt. So what I think is that you should not ever cold call your demo to anyone. You need to post it in the proper sites, the proper Discord servers where that stuff is allowed, and make it appealing enough where people learn about the game through other social media. They'll do their own due diligence if they actually care, and then they'll click on the link that takes you to an actual itch page that actually has some work put into it, has an actual trailer, has actual release notes and patches for the past few years or whatever it takes. And then hopefully maybe someone might download the game. It's getting sparse on itch. It really is.
I actually don't think that sharing your game in Discord does anything, to be honest with you.
It depends, sometimes you meet people that way and sometimes you can get testers that way, but yeah, it used to do a lot more and now it doesn't do nearly as much.
Yeah, if you that's your goal to get testers and stuff, yeah. But I'm talking about like if you want a new player, you are not going to find that on Discord. That's just not what it is. Like a person that's going to buy your game, they're just not on Discord.
Right. No, you don't go to Discord to purchase games. They had that as an option and they got rid of it because they realized it wasn't how people do things. They go to Steam to buy games.
And the thing is, too, if you've got a game and it's actually, if you've spent the time and put a nice thumbnail on it, and you've got a little bit of demo and all those things, and you've set up the itch page okay. I'm talking about itch, not Steam at this point. And you dump it onto itch, that game will. Itch is pretty good at letting games that are okay do some stuff, because if people like click on that game, it'll go. Like, I've had games that have gone on itch and got like 10,000 downloads or something the first week, just because they would place nicely, that they were in a game jam or whatever. But you know, having just a really good looking game is all you need. It's not, if it's a crap game, people aren't going to play it. That's pretty much the sum of it. It's not anything else. If it's a good game, people will keep finding it. I mean, some of my games on itch, people still keep finding that stuff because that they like the look of the game, you know?
Yep.
So I think the best thing you can do is make a game that looks all right.
I think that's really solid advice. I mean, I it's funny because just recently I was telling someone who wanted to make a game but couldn't do art that not all games need good art, but your chances are so much better if it looks good.
Mm.
You know, and people talk about, you know, marketing starts early in development, you know, and it does, because you need to be able to visualize how it's going to look on screen when you're developing it, how it's going to look on a GIF, or how a video is going to look, how the trailer is going to look. All that stuff should be figured out while you're before you develop it.
Funny you say that. When I was kind of thinking about building this game, Light Haze World, that was like one of the first things I thought of before I even thought of puzzles. I thought of what the demo is going to look like before I even started building the game.
It's important.
If the demo looks crap or the trailer looks crap, like, people are just, they're not going to be interested. Like, I'm not saying I've got the best version of anything here. Like, things that I'm doing, I'm sure people don't like that, and that's fine too. But it's getting a little bit of momentum based off how we've designed things. So
yeah, no, it's very important that it looks good on the screen, and that it looks good in social media, and that the trailer looks good. You know, all that stuff is way more important than people think.
Yeah.
When it comes to like how well the game does, I mean, gameplay is always going to be a huge part of it. But if people don't see it and like what they see, they're not going to know anything about the gameplay because they won't have played it.
Yeah. I reckon that's exactly right. And the thumbnail on Steam, all of those things, like, you've got to make. Like I said before, I made several different thumbnails, and I keep updating them to different things that are more like, hopefully people are liking them more.
Are you talking about the capsule art?
Yeah, capsule art. I call them thumbnail. YouTube habit thumbnail. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to be clear. I'm not sure what thumbnail you had before, but now that you mentioned that, I'm looking at your thumbnail. I'm calling it a thumbnail now too. I'm looking at your capsule art, and I'm seeing that it's different than it was before, but I can't remember what it was like before.
Before, he was like in these ruins, and it was just. It kind of showed the adventurous side of the game. I'm trying to capture that people understand the game as it's going to be a cozy puzzle game. So this one here, I've kind of put him relaxing on a bench and a puzzle next to him to kind of encapsulate that in a picture.
With the dog.
Right? Yeah, with his puppy, of course. Yeah, if the other one was it was showing the adventure part of the game, which is another part of the game. I think you got to try and capture what the game's about in that one picture, which is challenging, like really challenging.
No, I agree. I mean, it's someone's job. A lot of the times, someone actually gets paid to do that a lot of the time. And yeah, like one of the number one advice that I hear, parroted about is that you should pay someone unless you're a professional yourself. But I feel like you've done a really good job on yours.
Thank you. Sorry, I just got a message. Thank you. I just, I've spent. That comes back to mobile development a bit too. It all comes back to this terrible platform of mobile development, because one of the things you need to do really, really, really is get those good app icons. And so I spent like 30 games worth plus trying to develop the perfect app icon, because that's what sells like a mobile game. And I feel like you just transfer that information that you learnt into making a really good capsule art for your Steam page.
It's a little bit like UI, right?
100%.
Yeah.
I love good UI. I think every game should focus on UI.
Well, it's so difficult that I think a lot of games are like, I don't want to touch it anymore. A lot of devs, they just don't want to deal with it anymore. You get it good enough, and then it's like, oh, it's good enough. I don't want to deal with it.
But it's the first thing you see when you get to a game. The UI. It's the first part of the game that you kind of get introduced to.
It's part of the game feel.
Yeah. So if I dump you into a game that's got terrible UI, and it's no, and I mean this, then the next thing is controls, something people don't think about a whole lot, and then
it's a can of worms. Controls.
Yeah. And it's so easy to kind of miss all the little things because you got the big scope in the head, and that's kind of where I said, if you stop and build something really good instead of trying to add lots of extra other features, you'll make a way better game.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's one thing to enjoy learning and stuff, but you can always have, and maybe this isn't the best advice, but you can always have other projects that are just for learning. If you're really inspired by a mechanic, you can still learn that mechanic without cramming it into your game.
Yeah.
And you can even market some of those like non-games that you're making too, just to have more stuff for social media or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's true. One thing that it can be a problem of game development. Like, I mean, there's tons of things, but if you did say that you learn as you're building a game. So, like our art style, our low poly art, we started with was good, like it was acceptable. But then as we got into building the game, it got better. And then the first low poly art that we had was then not up to par. So we had to improve that.
Right.
To kind of, and then we realized that we can't get any better. We've got to kind of just stay on this stagnant level now. Even though we are improving on what we're doing, we can't. We have to. That's where you've got to stay for that 2-year thing. And it's really hard to kind of control that, but I've learned something so cool. I want to do it now, but you can't. That's next game. That's next game's idea.
Yep. I mean, it all depends, I mean, some people, they have a determined timeline and they cannot go past that. And, it's good to stick to a timeline. It really is. But also, if you don't have that, there's no gun to your head, you're just self-publishing, like sometimes it's all right to up the game a bit if you feel like the the players are like, if there's enough players, if you're getting enough feedback, if the feedback is going in that direction and it's a lot of feedback saying, oh, I like the game, but the art isn't that great, it could use an overhaul sometimes. You know what I mean? But you do have to find that point where that's the stopping line. That's where it's good enough. People are going to enjoy it. You can spend your whole life learning how to become a better artist, coder, musician, whatever it is. You need to find a level that's stable, that's good enough, that's stable, that you can do quickly, and then stick to it to make it cohesive. Because it's difficult. It really is. I had that same problem with my game where I've been an artist my whole life, but I never really took pixel art seriously until I sat down and said, I'm going to make a pixel art game. And it seems like, oh, it's pixel art. How hard could it be? I went to school for 3D modeling. Well, it's not easy. There's a whole bunch of rules you have to learn, and then you have to learn which rules you can break and how to break them, which rules bend and whatnot. It took me a couple of years before I developed a good style of pixel art. And then once I hit that style, I was like, all right, well, this is what I need. Of course, I had already made 2 years worth of game at that point that I had to go back and give it new life, And it's better because of that. But yeah, it took longer. And,
yeah, but then you have to go, no, that's it. That's the line. We've stopped.
Exactly.
That's the line. I'm not going back another time or another 3. This is it.
Yeah, and I'm sure I could spend more time learning how to do better pixel art, but instead I'm kind of spending the time honing in on the style that I've determined.
Mm-hmm. I've been debating this for a while now with people about pixel art. I kind of hate that every newbie to the gaming world decides that's where they will start at pixel art. It's like, I'm going to be an indie game developer, and I'm going to start with pixel art, and then my world will increase from there. And I kind of hate it. Like 3D
it's pretty
models,
common.
Yeah, it's very common, and 3D models are not do. I mean, I'd almost say
you say they're not hard to do.
No, they're not. They're not hard to do. It's easy to put a few dots on the screen, but to do good pixel art, it's probably going to take you more learning to do 3D models if you're going to do like a low poly 3D model.
Yeah, I mean, you throw animation into the 3D modeling mix, and things can get pretty hairy.
True.
Especially if you don't know about topology and stuff like that. And then there's shaders is like a whole nother can of worms. Of course, there's shaders with pixel art too.
But also, vector art gets like no love, and I love vector art. Like I live for that.
It's big in the mobile space.
Yeah, but why doesn't that come to like? Why do we have to do everything pixel art? That's all I'm saying. Like, there's so many different art styles, and I feel like everyone's overcrowding the pixel world. Like, let's go away from that. I just want to throw that in there for people.
No, I think that's an interesting vantage, because I love 3D art. I went to school for 3D art. Like, I remember, what was it, Anaconda? I saw Anaconda, and I was like, oh my god, the 3D arts in this is so bad that I could make better 3D art. And I was like a little kid, so I was like, of course I couldn't at the time, but the motivation was there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I loved pixel art back then too, but I didn't have the means or the time, or it didn't speak to me as much back then as some of the cool stuff. Terminator 2, Jurassic Park, a lot of the was it Stan Winston Studio stuff was really speaking to me at the time, and I really wanted to go that route. And I did. I do 3D art all the time, but for my own game, I thought, I actually tried to do a 3D art game first. And I did a few different 3D art games. I'm one of those devs who did like 10 or so games that didn't do anything, right? That I didn't even publish or whatever. I didn't even fully finish, just to learn. And this was back before I had good internet, so I couldn't even share the stuff. I didn't even have a good enough computer to record the screen, or at least a decent frame rate. But anyways, the point I'm trying to get back to is that I think there's a lot of nostalgia in pixel art for people these days. I don't know if it's like the Game Boy Advance or where they're drawing the nostalgia from, but I think that they're trying to hit that, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I see a lot of new devs with some really bad pixel art, and I was probably the same way when my game first came out, where it was like, oh, I'm doing pixel art, it's retro and it looks pixely, I did the job. And then years later you look at it and like, wow, that was really not great pixel art. Some of it was okay, but other parts it was like, yeah, what were you thinking? And
I don't know.
I'm hoping that some of these newer games that you're seeing where the pixel art is not so great, that they do go back and overhaul it at least once. You know what I mean?
Oh, I think so, but I think it's just it's like that idea that I can get a pixel art studio like Sprite or something like that, and I can click on the screen and then all of a sudden I've drawn a person. It's super. I think the point to entry is really easy for pixel art too.
It's yeah. I mean, just you're working in 2 dimensions rather than 3 right there. It's a little bit easier to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
You don't have to rotate the canvas or your viewpoint around the canvas or around the object to see what you're doing. It's all there.
Yeah. But I don't know. At the other end of it, like, so you go through, build this pixel art game. At the other end of it, I mean, you can clearly see that pixel games don't sell for the same money that 3D games sell for. And at the other end of it also, that I think out of all the pixel games that are released today, for example, I would say 1 or 2 of them get through, where, like, I don't know if there's not as many, like, there's not as crowded marketplace to get into the 3D space.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I think that's all kind of, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but I think there's a lot of different ways you can look at that. I mean, there's just so many games that on both ends, pixel art and 3D, that you could say that most of them aren't going to do well.
Oh, true.
Right. And it's
true.
I'm not saying that it doesn't matter if it's 2D or 3D. I'm just saying that, like, either way, it's tough.
It definitely is.
For me, I think it's more important, and maybe this is because I do both 2D and 3D art, is I think it's more important to really, ask the project what it needs, not so much ask the consumer what they're going to pay for, but ask the project what it needs. You know what I mean?
So if you made Retro Spaceball, okay, so you made Retro Spaceball and then you made Modern Spaceball, which was a 3D version of that. It's the same game.
I thought about it.
Yeah.
I also thought about Vector Spaceball.
Yes, I love vectors. Yeah, but the same game. Do you think that the the 3D version would sell for more?
I mean, as a developer, you can put any price tag you want on it, and you sell one game, and you can say that it sold for more. But it's you're never really going to know exactly what the best way to do it is. You just kind of have to guess and hope that was the best, and then learn from your mistakes as you go. But each game is different. What I could say is that a 3D version of Retro Spaceball would be way too hard to explain to the player. Where, I mean, the 2D version is already hard enough. I wouldn't even want to touch it in 3D.
I don't think it would work as a project. So that kind of goes back to what you were saying before. Like, the project suits it does suit the graphics you've got for it. That's what suits the project. So I get that. And
you could probably get away with like a 2.5D thing, but at that point, it would almost be more work, I think, to make things that fit that that image size. I guess like the player size and the enemy size, all of those things. They would be, if they were 3D renderings, they would be really small for 3D renderings. You know, it's almost a waste of work. And don't get me wrong, it's difficult to make 2D pixel art, but let's say that you're just as good at both, and it takes you just as long. Then, you know, why make something that is animated with a skeleton? And I mean, there's reasons why you would do it on both ends, I guess. You know, you can reuse animations, you can adjust skeletons, you can do all this cool stuff in 3D. Where in 2D, you kind of have to start from scratch with each animation. I mean, you can do a little bit of, you know, onion skin type stuff and tracing and whatnot, copy and paste parts of a sprite or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. It's like I said, it really comes down to what the game needs.
Yeah, I get that point too. I don't know if Light Haze World would have worked in like a top-down 2D game. I feel like if I did make it in a top-down 2D game, it could have been, it would have looked like more like a really old Zelda game, I guess.
Yeah.
But if I did do that, I feel like it would have been $5 cheaper on sale point.
Perhaps. And you know what? There's a whole lot of games like that where there's not that many games like yours.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was part of why we went 3D too, because we wanted to be different in the marketplace.
I think it's better because of that choice. I really do.
Thank you.
And like I said, it always depends on the game, but for your particular game, I think it works really well with the art style that you've chosen, the music and everything. Just it comes together so nicely.
No, cool. I don't know. It's been a lot of work, so it's getting to. I want to be at that end day with the button on Steam and it goes live and people buy it, and then my first review is some negative review of some guy that wanted to make a joke.
Get the clown badge.
Yeah, to get the clown badge on Steam, and I'm like, it's all worth it now.
well, here's a good way to maybe end things or to wrap things up a bit. What do you see yourself doing after release, other than day one patches and that updates and stuff like that? Do you plan to? Do you have another project in mind? Are you planning on expanding the studio or anything like that? What are your thoughts on the future after release?
Well, the immediate future after release would be working to get it onto multiple platforms. That's pretty much the obvious answer there. Because it go to Steam and then try to go Nintendo and PlayStation and Xbox.
Now, would you be doing the porting yourself, or would you be paying another studio to do the porting?
I would plan to do it myself. I would like to. I would like to get into publishing a bit. I do enjoy that whole side of promoting games. I love that kind of side of everything. So I wouldn't mind doing some publishing. So it would make sense to try and port it myself to everything and see if that's something I really want to follow up on or not. But
now, would you start with Nintendo and then branch out, or would you try to do all three at once?
I don't know. I think definitely start with Nintendo because I think that's where it would find its biggest audience, the game. And
also I've heard that
feedback from people that played. Sorry.
Oh yeah, they would like to see it on that platform. Well, that's good, you know. One thing I was going to say is that I've heard that porting to Switch is actually quite difficult. So it would be a good well, you're kind of jumping in the deep end a little bit, but it would be a good sink or swim moment, I think.
Yeah. Well, and by who knows when this is released, the new Nintendo is rumored to be out by like next year, early next year. So maybe, I don't know if it's worth going backwards to the Switch or just going to the new. I've always wanted to be one of those developers who gets the game onto that new console like in the early moments when there's nothing else to play in that console. I feel, you know what I mean? Like you've got huge opportunity. There's some games that have made it popular just because they were like one of the first on that platform, and like people are like,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, that era is kind of behind us though. You know, I've been keeping up with the Switch news, and from what I understand, the eStore isn't going to update. It's going to be the same, and that Switch games are going to work on the new Switch.
I know, you didn't have to ruin all my dreams.
Well, I'm pretty sure that the same thing is happening with and now, like I said, I don't have a PlayStation 5 or a new Xbox, but I'm pretty sure the same kind of thing's happening, where when PlayStation 5 came out, they released a whole bunch of PlayStation 4 games, right?
Yeah. Well, I think you can pretty much. I've got a PlayStation 5 and everything on PlayStation 4.
It's backwards compatible, right?
Anything online you bought, you can just download straight to your PlayStation 5.
Yeah, and then I guess what I kind of had it backwards. What I was trying to say was that PlayStation 5 games were coming out also for PlayStation 4. Like Cyberpunk, for example, was before it was pulled from the shelves. They had tried to make a PS4 version and a PS5 version, which is interesting.
Well, but when the PlayStation 5 came out, there was like in the store, they kind of really pumped the PlayStation 5 games. So I think Nintendo might have been. I can't speak for Nintendo. I shouldn't speak for that one, but Xbox was a bit the same when the Xbox Series S or whatever it is. They kind of pushed the games that were made for that hardware.
For sure.
So you still got like a little bit of a window there that kind of gives you a big spot light, hopefully, but I'm not sure. But anyway, if I can get that the game onto multiple platforms, then it comes down to a little bit of a waiting game, I think, on what comes next is if the game is successful, and I don't know what success looks like at this time, but I would say it'd have to make, like a few thousand sales or something like that. But if the game had a reasonable amount of success, then you consider doing a sequel to the game because you know that it's a game that people want.
Sure.
And if the game isn't so successful, I guess then go back to the drawing boards and think about what you want to do.
For sure. But, that brings up a good point that you are enjoying the game even years into the development enough where you would think about making another one, kind of like it using the same IP, because sometimes you get sick of working on a game. I mean, not you, but anyone could get sick of working on what they're working on. And if you don't get sick of it, that's a good sign.
I'm 100% not sick of the game. There is days when I don't do something, but
sure.
Kind of worked on this work balance life thing. I've been working really hard at it, especially in the last year or so to find. So when I first started the project, I was working like 60 hours a week and doing like tons and tons of stuff. And now,
the daily grind, right?
Yeah, like every day, Saturday, Sunday. Now I've kind of like taken the weekends. Like I might do a bit on Saturday, but not on Sunday. I might have one day off, kind of thing. At this point, because I know I'm kind of trying to build myself up into getting a whole lot more work done this year. But yeah, I do enjoy the game, and there's different parts of. I think if you're an indie developer, you've got to learn. If you can't do coding today, then maybe go and do some design work today. If you can't do some design work today, then maybe go and do some level testing. Just find something else that you're happy to do, and then
I
do
think
that.
that's great advice.
So some days I wake up and I could not be bothered coding anything. So I'll just get in and do this other stuff. And you just got to move your window. Like, decide what you're going to do that day and do it. But, have a thought process on what you feel like to sometimes give yourself a bit of flexibility. Otherwise, you'll burn yourself out.
Yeah, no, those are really great points. And work-life balance is so much more important than people tend to think, especially when they first start. Because, when you first start, there's so much motivation and drive and passion. It's like you can't even think about why would you take weekends off? Weekends is when you work. But the longer you do it, the more you realize that there's like a whole world out there that you're not experiencing because you're locked into a computer screen, and it will pass you by if you don't pay attention. So you gotta poke your head out every once in a while and see what's going on. Touch grass. You've got a family. Obviously, that's very important. You gotta make sure all the things are getting done in life, not just the game.
And also, weirdly, I've been trying to include exercise in my day.
I as well.
and it sounds like, oh yeah, that's really hard to do. But just motivating yourself to get out and go for like a half an hour walk or something, is like really good for your brain, and it just helps keep you refreshed. And I have a standing desk also. I think we spoke about this last time we talked. And
perhaps I have one as well.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm standing right now.
Yeah, me too. I don't even have my chair anymore at standing desk. Mine goes up and down, but I just remove my chair. I just stand now. But if you get a standing desk, get the like really good what do you call it, like pad for your feet.
Oh, yep, I've got a pad for my feet.
Yeah, you've got to get the good one that's like super comfy. But yeah, doing all those like little things. Because I at some stages I was sitting there for like 12 hours a day, and then I couldn't even sleep properly because my brain was just like so. I was sleeping like 4 hours a night, kind of thing. My brain just wasn't turning off.
Right.
So doing like that little bit of exercise will change where my brain's at, and let me do some more sleeping and getting back to being normal.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I've been doing a little bit of meditation before bed sometimes, and that tends to help me wind down a little bit. But also, one thing that I started doing just a few, like maybe 4 or 5 months ago, is that I've been tracking how much I exercise. I just use a piece of graph paper and I write a square. At first, it was every 5 minutes I'd put a square, but now I'm doing every 10 minutes because I'm more in the groove of it, and that's actually helped motivate me a lot.
Yeah, well, I've got like I'm an Apple fanboy, and I've got like the Apple Watch that does all that stuff for me.
The Fitbit type thing, or whatever.
Yeah, it tells me how far, and then I get awards for like how much exercise and that I've done as well.
Oh yeah,
I was like, oh, you've just done a 36-day streak of exercise. I'm like, oh yeah, now I'm conscious that I don't want to break that streak and see how long I can keep this streak going. Yeah. So, anyway, you get like those kind of things, I guess.
Oh yeah. No, I think it's really important. Again, something that developers don't really realize when they're first starting out, how important exercise is. Like, be like, oh, I'm not overweight, or, I've got a healthy diet. Like, but the reality is that you're not, when you're at a computer, you're basically just doing nothing. Mm-hmm. You're doing harm to your body in most situations. Even if you're standing with good posture, like, you can't have great posture 100% of the time. You're giving yourself carpal tunnel syndrome. Like, you have to exercise, otherwise your body is just going to fall apart eventually. And if you're in it for the long haul, then you need to. And it'll bite you in the ass if you don't, and then you'll be forced to, and it's going to be a lot more difficult when you have no muscle strength.
Oh,
I was in and this is off topic, but I was actually in a really strange situation where I think even the last time we spoke, I was having a lot of issues with my bones and my muscles and my joints. And strangely enough, I realized that is a gluten intolerance that was causing this.
I think you did tell me about this. Yeah,
it's crazy because I was trying to figure out what was wrong with me for the longest time. Why does my body hurt so much? I was exercising, but it was so painful to do exercising. I was getting physical therapy because that's what the doctor prescribed. But the reality is that my body just wasn't handling gluten. And when that happens, maybe people don't know this, but your small intestine stops absorbing nutrients. So all of a sudden you stop getting vitamin D, and then your bones are like in pain because of it. Your bones will actually hurt from not getting enough vitamin D.
Huh.
And then all of a sudden I realized that I should, my doctor said, maybe you have celiac disease. And right then I stopped eating gluten, and within 2 days, the muscle joint pain went away. It was like, holy cow. So, I mean, that's kind of like a different thing. But I guess the moral is to pay attention to your body, because that's important. You only get one.
Not only pay attention, but look after yourself. Like,
oh, yeah.
I mean, think about it. All of us indie devs are going to be billionaires one day. And what are we going to spend our money on if we've got no good body left?
Right.
That wasn't a joke. Anyway.
Well, when we can just buy robot body parts to replace our useless body
that's
parts.
True. And then
we're not far off.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, I think I'm just about out of I've got to pick up my kids soon.
Yep. No, we've gone for 3 hours here, so I'll have to edit this down. But it was wonderful talking to you. Thank you for spending so much time and chatting with me. Sorry that it's gone a little overboard.
Oh, I don't care. I love talking. It's like the best.
To just wrap things up, you've got radiobush.com as your website. You've obviously got the Steam page for Light Haze World. You've got a Discord server. Anything else you want to plug?
At Radiobush on everything. Just
at Radiobush on everything.
Every social platform. And if you follow me or talk to me, you can say hello to me and tell me you're not. I'm pretty friendly. Just say
you're pretty friendly. You just don't come off like a scammer or a bot.
Yeah, or I come across rude. Pretty fast.
All right. Well, thanks so much again. Enjoy your day, and hopefully we'll chat soon.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
All right, take care.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, everyone, for joining. This was episode 19 of Indie Game Dev Report. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day.